Man, my man got a bad bitch in real life, in real motherfucking life. And I ain't never going nowhere. We locked in. You can't compare where you can't compete, stink. Yeah, you know, him, that's me.
The 4th of July is a day of joy, a time when families and friends gather to celebrate freedom, unity, and the American spirit. It is marked by barbecues, laughter, fireworks, and patriotic pride. Across the country, the night sky glows with dazzling lights as people cheer and wave their flags. For most, it is a day of happiness and togetherness, a moment to create memories with loved ones. However, in 2024, what should have been a day of celebration turned into a nightmare. Instead of cheers and fireworks, the air was filled with fear, confusion, and heartbreak. News spread like wildfire across Texas and beyond. Tasha Hymond, a beloved celebrity makeup artist, had been shot. The shocking part? She was live streaming on Facebook when it happened. Her followers, who had tuned in expecting another fun and glamorous session, found themselves instead as witnesses to something unthinkable. One moment, she was laughing and chatting with her audience. The next, chaos erupted. The screen shook, the sound of gunshots rang out, and then silence.
It started off great.
What is left of 24 hours ago
Everybody was coming out, cooking out in their front yard.
is a reminder of what is lost.
Everything just went downhill from there.
In the Eastland neighborhood of Fort Worth at Castleman and Comanche, Lizbeth was with her family celebrating the 4th of July.
Like before everything started, they were already here.
Fort Worth police was already monitoring the area. They say 200 to 300 people took over the block.
I'm trying to show y'all all these people outside.
Just before midnight, the booming sound of fireworks was muted by gunfire.
What y'all doing, Facebook?
Half an hour before, Tasha Hymond was streaming live on Castleman Street.
What really happened that night? Who would want to harm Tasha Hymond? And why did this tragedy unfold on one of the most patriotic days of the year? As the world tried to make sense of the horror, one thing was clear: this was no accident. It was a cold-blooded act that ended the life of a rising star. But the truth behind that fateful night would be even more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. Stay tuned as we delve into the murder of popular makeup artist Tasha Hymond. Tasha had built her reputation through hard work and passion. In a town where everyone knew each other, her beauty studio was a place of transformation, a haven where dreams were painted in bold colors and soft brushes. People came to her for makeup, hope, and a reminder that everyone deserved to feel special. As the evening grew livelier, Tasha took out her phone and began to share the night with her followers through a live stream. Her goal was simple: to show the world the beauty and warmth of her Fort Worth community. At first, everything was perfect. The live stream captured happy faces, laughter, and the exciting build-up to the fireworks. Families gathered on sidewalks and friends shared smiles and kind words. It was a picture of peace and celebration. However, hidden behind the joy, there were small signs that something was not quite right. Some drivers, caught up in the excitement of the holiday, began to perform reckless stunts on the streets. They drove in circles and did dangerous donuts near the party. Their actions were the opposite to the calm smiles of the neighbors, and few paid much attention to these early hints of trouble. For many, Tasha was a symbol of hope and light. Her genuine care for others, along with her ability to make each person feel valued, had made her a beloved figure in Fort Worth. People often spoke of her with warm admiration, and her makeup studio was a place where dreams were nurtured. On this 4th of July, her smile lit up the live stream, and her presence gave the night an extra dose of happiness. As the evening continued, the cheerful scenes and happy faces painted a picture of a perfect summer night. Tasha's live stream showed the crowd's delight, and for a while, the world seemed to be filled with nothing but laughter and hope. But hidden behind that brightness were moments that hinted at a growing tension. It was as if the very air was charged with a secret energy, waiting for the moment when everything would change. The joy of the evening took a sudden dark turn. Tasha Hymond kept her phone steady as she live-streamed the block party on Castleman Street. At first, her smile was bright and full of hope. People danced, laughed, and celebrated under the glowing sky. Families and friends shared hugs and kind words, But in the background, the sounds of the night began to change. A loud bang echoed from somewhere near the party. At first, no one knew what it was. A firework had exploded too close to a police cruiser. The bright burst of light startled everyone for a moment. Tasha's live stream showed confused faces. Many did not yet understand that this was only the first sign of what was to come. Soon after, a series of sharp, echoing gunshots broke the calm. The happy moment turned into screams and cries. Tasha's phone captured the first signs of panic as people ran in all directions. The live stream showed chaos. The camera shook as Tasha tried to keep her focus while people around her scrambled for safety. It was hard to tell where the gunshots came from or how many there were. In a matter of seconds, the festive mood was replaced by terror. People dropped to the ground, ducking behind cars and bushes. The joyful laughter was drowned out by the sound of sirens and desperate cries. Tasha, still holding her phone, tried to show the live stream so that everyone could see what was happening. But the screen soon filled with images of frightened faces and blurred shapes running away from danger. Amid the chaos, Tasha herself was not spared. A sharp sound, like a crack of thunder, came from very close by. Tasha gasped, and her hand trembled. The live stream, which had started with hope and brightness, now showed a moment of horror. Tasha was hit by a stray bullet. The camera wavered, capturing her shock as she staggered and fell. In one instant, the face that had lit up the night was gone. The live stream ended abruptly, leaving viewers in stunned silence. The shock spread quickly among the crowd. People began to cry out and run faster. The camera, still recording from a safe distance, showed a street that had turned into a battleground. The once bright party now looked like a scene from a nightmare. The cheerful lights were now mixed with the flashing red and blue of police cars. Smoke from fireworks and burning debris filled the air as the community struggled to understand what had happened. In the confusion, another life was lost that night. A young man named Marcus Martin Jr., a visitor from San Diego, was also caught in the turmoil. Initially, it was said that he died from a medical emergency caused by the shock and chaos. Later, evidence would hint that his death was not so simple. For the moment, the community could only mourn the sudden loss. Marcus, like Tasha, was seen as a friendly face among strangers, and his passing added to the growing grief. The police quickly arrived on the scene. Officers rushed into the crowded street, trying to calm the panicked crowd and secure the area. They found it hard to move among the frightened partygoers. Many people were hiding, shaking, or simply too stunned to speak. The police could only ask questions, but most were too scared to answer. The community had learned that talking to the police could bring trouble. In that moment, silence reigned among those who witnessed the horror. Witnesses remembered that before the chaos, there had been a few small signs of trouble. Some drivers had shown off, performing dangerous stunts with their cars. They drove in circles and spun around the intersection, making loud noises and drawing unwanted attention. These acts, once seen as playful or daring, now seemed to foretell a dark fate. The reckless behavior and the careless handling of fireworks were early warnings that the night was not as safe as it looked. Back on the screen of Tasha's live stream, the moments of celebration had vanished. The video now showed a mix of terror and confusion. A single frame caught a group of men standing near parked cars. Their faces were hidden in shadows, and their eyes looked cold and determined. One of the men, wearing a dark hoodie and a red bandana, gave a quick, angry look towards the camera. It was a brief moment, but it sent shivers down the spine of anyone who saw it. This silent exchange seemed to say that there was more behind the violence than a simple accident. As the night wore on, the sounds of sirens and shouts filled the air. Neighbors who had once waved to each other now huddled together in fear. Doors were locked and windows were drawn shut. The sense of safety that had defined Fort Worth's community was shattered. The street that had been filled with light and laughter now lay in shadows, stained with fear and uncertainty. In the days that followed, the tragedy began to unfold slowly. The police started piecing together the evidence from that fateful night. Tasha's live stream became one of the most talked about pieces of evidence. Investigators watched it over and over, trying to catch any detail that could explain the sudden outbreak of violence. The video was blurry and cut off too soon, but it held hints of what had really happened. It showed the bright moments of a celebration turned into a horror story in a few short seconds. The community of Fort Worth was left with many questions. How could a night meant for joy turn into a scene of death and despair so quickly? Who had fired those bullets, and why had they chosen that night for such a cruel act? The answers were not clear, and the silence among witnesses did little to help. Fear had taken over the community, and many were too scared to come forward with any information. The shock of losing Tasha Hymond and Marcus Martin Jr. was deep and painful. For many, the night was marked by the loss of innocent lives and the shattering of a once safe neighborhood. Tasha's death was a heavy blow to those who knew her. She had been more than just a makeup artist. She was a friend, a mentor, and a source of light for many. Her ability to make others feel beautiful and confident was unmatched. In her absence, the community felt a loss that went far beyond the personal. Tasha had been a symbol of hope and creativity, a reminder that even in a small town, one person could make a big difference. As the investigation began, police found clues that hinted at something more sinister than a random act of violence. The broken glass, scattered bullet casings, and the pattern of the shots suggested that this was not a simple accident or a case of gang violence. It looked like a coordinated act, one that had been planned. The evidence pointed to multiple shooters, each firing from different positions on the street. This revelation sent a chill through the community. If it was planned, then who had wanted to hurt Tasha, and why would someone target her on a night of celebration? In the days that followed, friends and family of Tasha cried for answers. They could not understand why someone would want to harm such a kind soul. Her fiancé, Tommy Howard, was among the most vocal in his grief. He remembered her not just for her talent, but for her gentle nature and the joy she spread. In quiet moments, he would speak of the love they shared and the bright future that had been taken away from them. His voice broke as he tried to make sense of a night that had turned so dark. The investigation soon revealed that the night's violence was part of a larger, more complex plan. For a while, police struggled to gather enough evidence, as many witnesses remained silent. They had filmed, recorded, and shared what they saw, but the true story was hidden behind layers of fear and confusion. The police were determined to find out who was responsible. They followed every lead, no matter how small, and promised the community that they would bring justice for Tasha Hymond. The shock of that night spread far beyond Fort Worth. News of the tragedy reached many, and people began to ask hard questions about safety, responsibility, and the dangers lurking in the night. How could a community so full of life be plunged into darkness so suddenly? The answers were not simple, and as more details emerged, it became clear that the events of that night were part of a larger, troubled picture of violence in the city. For those who watched the live stream later, the footage was a haunting reminder of a celebration gone wrong. The contrast between the early joy and the sudden terror left a lasting mark on everyone who saw it. The once bright smile of Tasha had been replaced by the shadow of fear. And as the police continued their search for the truth, the community of Fort Worth was left to wonder, who would be the next to fall in this spiral of violence? After the tragedy, the investigation began in earnest. The police worked day and night to collect every piece of evidence that could explain what happened on that fateful night. They started by carefully watching Tasha's live stream, which had captured the chaos in its earliest moments. In that shaky video, a moment stood out. A brief glimpse of a man wearing a dark hoodie and a red bandana. His face, partly hidden in shadow, showed a fierce anger. This small detail raised many questions and soon became a key part of the investigation. The forensic team worked hard to piece together the events. They collected bullet casings from the scene and analyzed them one by one. The results were surprising. The casings came from different weapons. This meant that more than one shooter was present that night. The pattern of the gunfire did not look like the actions of one person in panic. Instead, it pointed to a coordinated attack. This finding deepened the mystery, as it suggested that the violence was planned rather than random. With the ballistic evidence in hand, detectives began to look for suspects. Their first break came with the arrest of a 21-year-old man named Todrick Rogers. He was brought in for questioning and soon charged with murder. However, as the investigation continued, the evidence did not add up to a single shooter acting alone. The police found that different guns had been used from several positions on the street. It was clear now, there were at least 2 and maybe even 3 shooters that night. Detectives then focused on Tasha's live stream again, hoping it held more clues. By carefully reviewing every frame, they found the suspicious man in the hoodie and red bandana again. Using clear images from the video, the police compared his face with mugshots in their database. Their search led them to Javon "Drock" Matthews, a man known to have been involved in past criminal activities. His image, with a scar running down his jawline, matched the brief glimpse from the live stream. This revelation added another layer to the case, making it appear that the shooting was not an act of random violence. As the investigation unfolded, the police also turned to cell phone records and social media posts for answers. They discovered a call where a suspect's voice could be heard saying, "They ain't got nothing on me." This call, full of bravado, hinted at a pre-planned act. In addition, a mysterious post on Facebook read, "Some people don't deserve to make it out alive." Although the post was brief, it sent shock through the investigation. Authorities linked the post to a man with known gang ties, which suggested that the attack might have been connected to a larger criminal network. Interviews with neighbors and witnesses added more pieces to the puzzle. Many people in the community recalled seeing a group of men near parked cars just before the shooting started. Some described how one man seemed unusually tense, as if he knew something was about to go wrong. Others whispered that they had seen suspicious vehicles leaving the scene quickly. Yet, most of these witnesses were too afraid to speak in detail. The fear in Fort Worth was strong, and many believed that talking to the police could bring danger to themselves or their families. In a quiet room at the police station, detectives pored over the details of the case. They rewatched Tasha's live stream frame by frame, trying to pick up every clue. In one frame, the man in the hoodie appeared clearly. His angry look and the way he quickly turned away when he noticed the camera did not seem like a random reaction. The detective's heart pounded as he noted every small detail. Each new clue seemed to point toward a larger, more sinister plan behind the violence. The growing evidence soon forced the detectives to confront the possibility that Tasha Hymond had not been the only target. Some theories began to circulate that she might have seen or heard something she should not have. Her live stream, which started as a joyful display of community celebration, might have captured moments that made her a threat to those who planned the attack. If so, her death would not be just a tragic accident, but part of a larger, deliberate act of violence. As the investigation deepened, the police uncovered more about the planning behind the attack. They found that the shooters had been positioned in different spots on the street, firing in a coordinated crossfire. This was no act of spontaneous rage. It was a carefully orchestrated plan. The evidence pointed to the involvement of at least 3 shooters. Todrick Rogers and Javon Matthews were now on the police's radar, but the existence of a third shooter remained a haunting mystery. Detectives continued to interview residents of Fort Worth. In hushed tones, many shared stories of strange behavior on that night. One witness recalled hearing someone yell, "Cut that out," just before the first shot was fired. Another said they had seen a man with a red bandana lurking near the scene. Each of these details added to the growing picture of a night planned to sow chaos and fear. The community's sense of safety was shattered, and the questions kept piling up. In one late-night meeting, a small group of officers and detectives gathered to share their findings. They reviewed every piece of evidence, from the live stream footage to forensic reports and witness statements. The mood in the room was somber, as every new clue led to more unanswered questions. Who had ordered this attack? Why had the shooters chosen that particular night? And most importantly, who was the mastermind behind it all? With each passing day, the police felt the pressure to solve the case. The community of Fort Worth demanded justice for Tasha Hymond and Marcus Martin Jr. At the same time, the silence from many witnesses made it clear that fear had gripped the neighborhood. People were scared to speak out, worried that their own safety might be at risk if they came forward. The investigation was like trying to solve a complex puzzle in the dark. Every new piece of evidence was both a step forward and a reminder of how much was still hidden. The detectives knew that they were dealing with criminals who were careful and dangerous. The methods used that night showed that the attack was planned with precision, leaving behind no simple explanation. Even as the police began to close in on some of the suspects, the mystery of the third shooter loomed large. There were hints in the evidence and in the memories of the frightened witnesses that someone else had been there. Someone who had managed to slip away into the night. This thought sent chills through the investigators. If the third shooter was still at large, then the real mastermind might still be free, watching over everything from the shadows. In the silent hours of the morning, while the city of Fort Worth tried to recover from its shock, the detectives worked tirelessly. They reviewed every detail of the case, determined to find the missing pieces of the puzzle. The memory of Tasha's bright smile, now forever silenced, fueled their resolve to bring justice to those responsible. Every small detail, every shadow in the live stream, every whispered comment from a fearful witness, each was a clue in the search for truth. The investigation had reached a critical turning point. With Todrick Rogers in custody and Javon Matthews now linked to the case, the detectives faced the daunting task of uncovering the full extent of the plot. The evidence they had gathered so far painted a picture of a planned attack, a night when careful preparation met a violent execution. The fear that had gripped the community only made the task more urgent. Fort Worth, once a safe haven of community spirit, now found itself haunted by a night of unspeakable violence. In the days that followed the shocking night, the investigation took a final dramatic turn. Detectives, who had spent long hours piecing together every detail, finally found a clue that led them to the true mastermind behind the attack. All the evidence now pointed to one name, Darnell Foster. Unlike the other suspects, Foster was not one of the shooters seen on that chaotic night. Instead, he was the man who had planned the attack from the start. He had used the night's chaos to cover his true aim, a plan that involved more than just random violence. Late one evening, police intercepted a call between two men connected to Foster. In hushed tones, one of them boasted, "They ain't got nothing on me. I was never there." This call, along with a string of suspicious social media posts and careful surveillance on known associates, led the detectives to focus on Foster. They learned that he had strong ties with a local gang and a history of violence that made him dangerous. Foster's name was mentioned in several interviews, and his connection to a failed drug deal with Marcus Martin Jr. soon came to light. Marcus Martin Jr. was not simply a bystander caught in the crossfire, as many had thought. New forensic evidence revealed that his death was not caused by a sudden medical emergency. Instead, it became clear that he had been shot in the back. Witnesses recalled that when chaos erupted, a group of shooters had taken positions all along Castleman Street. While Tasha Hymond was hit by stray bullets and suffered a fate that shocked the entire community, Marcus had been targeted. Foster's motive was slowly coming into focus. Marcus had once been involved in an illegal deal gone wrong. He had betrayed Foster by not delivering a large sum of money, and the attack was meant to serve as punishment for that betrayal. As the days passed, the pressure on the police grew. The quiet community of Fort Worth, still reeling from the tragic loss of Tasha and Marcus, demanded answers. Neighbors, once happy to greet each other on the streets, now kept their doors locked and their voices low. Many were too frightened to speak, fearing retribution from those who had planned the violent attack. But the detectives were determined to break the silence. They worked tirelessly, reviewing hours of footage, examining every piece of evidence and questioning anyone who might have seen even a small detail. A breakthrough came when officers tracked a series of bank transactions and phone records that led to Foster. With this evidence in hand, the Fort Worth SWAT team planned a raid on an apartment complex on the east side of the city. The plan was careful and precise. On the morning of August 2nd, 2024, the team moved in quietly and swiftly. In a tense moment, they found Darnell Foster trying to escape through a back door. He was caught without a struggle and taken into custody. The arrest of Foster sent shockwaves throughout the community. Finally, there was a name behind the cruelty that had turned a joyful celebration into a nightmare. Once in custody, Foster was questioned at length. The detectives hoped that he would reveal the full story of that tragic night. In a cold, flat tone, he admitted that the attack was planned from the beginning. He explained that the fireworks, the dangerous stunts on the streets, and the chaos that followed were all part of his design to distract the community. His real aim had been Marcus Martin Jr., whose involvement in a past drug deal had made him a target. Tasha Hymond, though not the intended target, had been caught in the crossfire. Foster's words confirmed the worst fears of the community. This was not random gunfire. It was a hit carried out with careful planning. When Foster's confession became public, many in Fort Worth felt a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that justice was finally being served, and sorrow that their beloved community had been torn apart by violence. The trial of Darnell Foster, along with the cases of Todrick Rogers and Javon Matthews, became a major event in the town. The courtroom was filled with residents who had lost friends, family, and neighbors. They listened as the evidence was laid out: bullet casings, live stream footage, intercepted calls, and forensic reports that painted a clear picture of the night's events. The jury took its time, and when the verdict was finally read, it brought a small measure of closure. Todrick Rogers was sentenced to 25 years for his role, and Javon Matthews received 15 years for his involvement. But it was Darnell Foster's sentence that brought the heaviest weight of justice. He was given life without parole. For many, this sentence meant that the mastermind behind the attack would never again be free to harm another soul in Fort Worth. Even as the legal proceedings brought some closure, the scars on the community remained deep. Tasha Hymond was remembered not just as a victim, but as a bright light that had been cruelly snuffed out. Friends and family held memorial services where they shared stories of her kindness, her talent, and her unwavering belief in the beauty of life. Her makeup studio, Slay by Shay, was temporarily closed as the community grieved, but later reopened in her honor, a place where art and hope continued to flourish despite the darkness that had once fallen. Tommy Howard, Tasha's fiancé, struggled with the heavy burden of loss. In tearful interviews, he spoke of the love he had shared with Tasha and the dreams they had built together. "She was the light in my life," he said softly. "Without her, the world seems a little colder, a little darker." His grief was shared by many, and his plea for peace resonated through every corner of Fort Worth. Pastor Felton Jenkins, Tasha's cousin, spoke at a community gathering, urging everyone to come together and break the cycle of violence. "We must learn to speak up and look out for one another," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "Only then can we truly honor the memory of those we have lost." The case of the tragic night on Castleman Street soon became a symbol of both the fragility and the strength of the community. It served as a stark reminder of how quickly life can change from celebration to sorrow. And while justice had been served on paper, the emotional wounds would take much longer to heal. Many residents began to speak out about the need for safer neighborhoods and better support for those who were too scared to come forward. They held town meetings, organized community watches, and started conversations about how to break the culture of silence that had allowed the attack to happen. The final twist of the case left everyone with a confusing question. How could such darkness hide behind the mask of a festive celebration? It was a lesson that the community would not soon forget. The tragic death of Tasha Hymond, along with the loss of Marcus Martin Jr., had changed Fort Worth forever. In the quiet after the storm, the people began to rebuild their trust in one another. They understood that while the night of July 4th, 2024 would always be remembered for its horror, it could also serve as a turning point, a call to action to protect their community and honor those who had been lost. Tasha Hymond's legacy lives on through the lives she touched, and the memory of that fateful night continues to inspire a movement toward change. The community now stands together, determined to break the silence and ensure that such violence never happens again. The case is a reminder that even on the brightest nights, shadows can fall, and it is only by facing those shadows that true healing can begin. Thank you for watching our video. Share your thoughts with us in the comments section, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Remember to hit the notification bell for more videos.